Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, events, and issues surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. We have all three of them to talk about this week. I'm Stephen Conway. With me, as always, is Jeremy Finestone. We are contributors to the Fight Game Media Network, and we're happy to have you watching us back here again. Our first show post Wrestle Kingdom 17. And, you know, Jeremy, once again, I thought we were going to have a nice quiet week. There weren't any shows after New Year's Dash. We had Dash. We were going to talk about Dash, but we had 6 days to contemplate it and mull it over in our heads and look at this schedule. And I just thought, well, this would be a nice leisurely program today. And what do we get today instead?
A dump truck backed up into our peripheral news feed of everything that you could possibly want to talk about. So, hey, happy Tuesday. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about, as it turns out. So filling the time is no problem at all. We're going to be in a rush again to get through all this. But let's start with the number one thing. First of all, Jeremy, have you gotten some sleep? We did this show slap happy as hell a week ago, barely running on coffee. Then we did the Fight Game Media podcast with Garrett Gonzalez the next day. So we were like up in the middle of the night watching Dash as well and doing all that. Do you feel okay? How are you going into this one?
I actually did a little bit of extra duty. I joined Undeniable and Unplugged with Jesse Velasquez on a podcast talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling yesterday. So check that out. So I've been going and going and going. I kind of feel like the Energizer battery bunny right now, but we'll see in destination in mind. But it's not today, and it will not be next week.
So we're going to run down New Year's Dash match by match a little bit later in the program, but we have to fast forward a little bit to one angle that took place at the show, which is, of course, Jay White lost the IWGP World Heavyweight title to Kazuchika Okada in the main event at Wrestle Kingdom 17. We all know that. The next day at New Year's Dash, he was continuing to play his despondent part of his character, and he did this when he lost to Kota Ibushi, where he did a job on New Year's Dash to Tomohiro Ishii and had to regroup and think about things for a while, and he played all that up. We thought we were getting something similar to that. And then he attacks Hikuleo with a chair. So his post-match press conference with Okada was interesting because he was just, like I mentioned, utterly despondent, depressed, sad. And then he worked himself up to blaming Hikuleo for it, basically saying that everything was going great until Hikuleo turned his back on Bullet Club. So he was going to go right to the source of the problem and attack Hikuleo. Okay, decent angle, fair enough. He attacks Hikuleo with a chair at New Year's Dash. Then he throws in something that I didn't expect at the time, which is, let's have a match where the loser has to leave Japan. Basically, loser leaves town match. Now, that took me aback. And I thought, well,
let's be clear about this. It is a leave Japan, not leave New Japan match.
That's critical, isn't it? Because I just thought with all this stuff going on in North America, maybe one of these two were going to go back and kind of lead the charge there. So I thought, this could really go either way in a way, because at first I thought they just brought Hikuleo back from New Japan Strong. Would they really just kick him back over there? Well, maybe, but it seemed odd. Quite a statement would be if Jay had to go over there for a length of time, and maybe they were going to give Jay a run on top with some sort of North American thing. And then, maybe they're going to be working with Ring of Honor and AEW, and my mind's going all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, this could actually go either way, which is kind of fun because, like you mentioned, it didn't say leave New Japan. It just said leave Japan. So all kinds of doors open. Then we hear that Hikuleo was being looked at by WWE. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Hikuleo, you can't teach height. And in WWE, he's the kind of guy that WWE might like. He does have charisma. He's not all the way there yet in the ring, but I think he's going to get there. And certainly having people not ready for national television doesn't stop WWE from throwing them on anyway. So I thought, okay, well, maybe so. Then what do we get today, Jeremy? We hear that Jay White might be leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling and that his contract might be up. I'm dizzy. I mean, what it comes down to is that this match, which is coming up, one of them could be gone. Both of them could be gone. And we don't know either one for sure. So where's your head at as we try to wrap our brains around this idea of Jay White, Hikuleo, and perhaps a future with both one or neither of them.
The other person that you have to keep in mind in all this is Tama Tonga, who has also been involved in some discussions, rumors, inquiries, perhaps, that he might be wanting to go stateside as well. So you take into account that you got Tama Tonga, Hikuleo, both kind of rumored. Where does that leave Tangaloa? He's injured. He's got a knee injury. He's been out since last summer. Does he have injury time? Is that going to play a factor into his brother's decisions to go forward with another promotion? Do they wait for him? Do they do another year and just kind of figure out the timetable so that they all can go together? Maybe it's a package deal. There's stuff to keep in mind with that. Now, when you get to Jay White, he is a completely different level of wrestler and quantity in pro wrestling, and a conversation in and of itself. If he were to go to WWE, it would be a completely different, like, changing of the game. He would be main event level, the kind of guy that would, like, I wouldn't even have a blinking eye if he were to be Seth Rollins. Like, Jay White, absolutely.
Well, no. You know that I think talent-wise, he's absolutely there. Do I think WWE would consider him a main event level wrestler? I'm not convinced.
I would look at him. They
made Jonah Mrs. Lackey.
I would look at him with getting an entrance larger than AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble in 2016. And with what's going on right now is the big X factor. So we're talking about WWE at a time where we're not sure what it's going to be looking like in the next week, month.
We don't even know who's in charge.
So it is pretty wildly, it would be pretty wild to consider a business transaction with a company with that right now, when you don't even know where you would stand with the people you're negotiating with as a contract here now in 6 months. I say,
or if the people you're negotiating with are even going to have their jobs in a couple of months.
100%. Wait 6 months. If you're done within the next 3 months, see the lay of the land, figure it out. Like, see what AEW has to offer you. Jay White's done Impact time. Hey, if he wants to show up in Noah and do something there for like a couple of spots, that would probably do great business for the Wrestle Universe viewing app such as that. So I don't think WWE is the only game in town right now. I think he would do well there, but I'm not necessarily sure that that should be the place he ends up. I think he would probably fit in better in AEW. Personally, I think he is a main event caliber, something that they're missing. A different kind of heel than MJF, if you were. Someone who's somewhat untouchable, but way more capable and competent in the ring to fans to deliver a 5-star match, if that is the thing that you're looking for, some measurable quantity. MJF is an entertaining property, and he'll probably be there, but Jay White is already there, kind of thing. So I think AEW would probably have a better fit for him, but I do think that if WWE were to have the best possible outcome, he would do very well there as well. What do you think?
I would love to see Jay, and say that Jay will do well in WWE, but their capacity to miss on what should be sure things is staggering. There are people in WWE who should have been main event guys that they did virtually nothing with. And I don't see an enormous difference in the way Triple H books versus the way Vince booked quite yet. And it's still fairly early, and we may never get to find out, as it turns out, since Vince might be coming back with probably the redefining the idea back with a vengeance, because I think that's literally what it's going to be.
Sure.
So with that in mind, does Vince McMahon think Jay White is a main eventer, which might be the more important question, even though Paul Levesque is currently head of creative? And that I'm really not convinced. I'm not convinced Vince.
I would agree with you 100%.
And
reading
so
the room,
that's something.
McMahon is not the guy.
Jay White has a WWE connection, though, in this. Before he was a wrestler, he won a contest to go to WrestleMania in Los Angeles as a kid in New Zealand. So as a kid in New Zealand, he got to make a trip out to Los Angeles to go to WrestleMania in person. And that was one of the things that, I mean, I think he
went to WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, I think so. And he went.
I went to WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, I think it was 21. Yeah, and so he went out there and he won this trip, and that was one of the reasons. There's more than that he wanted to be a pro wrestler. So, after seeing that, maybe there's something in him that just thinks, "Boy, I'd like to work a WrestleMania. I've done Wrestle Kingdom. I've main evented Wrestle Kingdom a couple of times. Maybe I'd want to go and do this." It's very possible that he would get lost in the shuffle in WWE. It's very possible he would get lost in the shuffle of AEW because God knows Tony Khan has about 8,000 people, it seems like, under contract rolling around out there. And Jeff Jarrett's getting television time. So I don't know what the hell's going on with that sometimes. But it's, you know what? This is all me being, this is all me being selfish. Jay White is my favorite heel in wrestling. MJF's fantastic. Roman Reigns and the Bloodline are on a wonderful run, and what I'm saying is there are a lot of good heels. Jay White is my favorite one, and selfishly, I want to see him play this out in New Japan. I want to see him have the run with Kenny Omega for Bullet Club supremacy or just because you've got to kill your idols, right? You know, there's just so many layers of things that are still for Jay White to do in New Japan, and I want to see him because I think he's one of the great big match wrestlers ever. If he goes to WWE, frankly, I worry for him. I worry it's going to end up like Jonah, where he's going to be somebody's lackey, or he's going to be doing something stupid, or he could be like Ricochet, who should have been a can't miss and is having a decent career, but not the one I thought Ricochet should have. And maybe it won't happen. Maybe he'll do great there. Maybe he'll be a main event guy. I would love that for him. Selfishly, I want to see my guy where he has been shining the most lately, and that's in New Japan. So, who knows? It's something that's still to come. And to be honest, Jeremy, we were talking about this a little bit off air. We don't actually know that he's out of contract, do we?
Yes. That was the next step of this. It's like 2021, it was reported that he had a 5-year contract. Every year since then, he has hinted, teased, trolled the internet in some way, shape, or form and got someone to bite that he might leave and go somewhere else. He does live stateside. All of these things all line up to make you think, yes, this could possibly happen. Mm-hmm. Do I think that his contract is up within the next year? No, I don't. Okay. I do think that Jay White wrestles at Wrestle Kingdom 18. What do you think?
I would love it. I hope so. I hope this is all part of it.
Just gut feeling.
And I think so because I agree with you on that. And I also think that Hikuleo is actually probably a better fit for WWE for what they do than maybe how they would portray Jay White. Again, this is not to do with the man's clearly as talented as anybody in that company. I worry about the creative. And that's the point. I think Hikuleo and maybe the Gorillas of Destiny make a lot of sense for WWE. I thought the Gorillas of Destiny would be a good WWE tag team a couple of years ago after they were, frankly, before this babyface turn, which has been very good for Tama Tonga. I thought Gorillas of Destiny were stale. I thought they'd done everything they could do, really. And I thought maybe it's time for them to go to WWE and see and have a run with teams like, the New Day and the Usos and, Pretty Deadly against Gorillas of Destiny would be interesting. Like there are some great tag teams in WWE and that could use some fresh opponents and things. But so maybe that's where Hikuleo and the guys are going, perhaps. Don't know. All of this is supposition. But it seems like New Japan is pretty sure they're losing one or both of them because, again,
they're hedging. It definitely feels like they're hedging.
I believe New Japan when they make a stipulation.
Mm-hmm. I think that's happening. I'm going to go back to a couple more points on this real quick.
Please.
I do have confidence with WWE and their ability to position former members or former leaders of the Bullet Club in prominent. You have Finn Balor at the front of Judgment Day. I know Rhea Ripley is more positioned as the leader, but Finn Balor is 100% front and center in that show on that stable and protected immensely. You have AJ, who was with the OG Club, and they were building their own stable before he broke his ankle. You could argue Kenny Omega is the leader of the Elite, and he is protected immensely over in AEW. So whatever his options are, given his pedigree and resume within wrestling and New Japan, I'm confident he's going to be fine. The other thing I'm going to mention is Hikuleo. I watched him in the tag match on Strong, part of the Strong review that we did later on. I watched him. I thought, how would he be like in WWE? And all I saw all of a sudden was Diesel. I just saw a Hikuleo version of Diesel.
Oh no! Come on, be nice to the guy. He's a talented
Paloa.
Guy. Don't Kevin Nash him. No,
but you could carry him around and be that heavy, that kind of William Morrissey, big cast kind of like the guy that you just like. He will wreck you once you get in the ring with him. And I think that there is almost more power of the Tongans all coming in together and debuting that way and being strong as a unit rather than one by one piecemeal, because their impact would be much stronger as a group. So beginning of the year, we're going to find out in about 3 weeks who's leaving Japan. Maybe they both are. I'm not ready to make a prediction just yet because I do not want to eat humble pie. But I am definitely curious about where this is going and who's getting the nah, hey, goodbye.
The match was intriguing to begin with before all these rumors about WWE and AEW came out, because, again, we believe New Japan when they make a stipulation. We're like, one of these guys is they just brought Hikuleo. Does that mean it's intriguing anyway. This just adds to the supposition. So before we move on to New Year's Dash, we're going to run down New Year's Dash. There were a lot of angles on New Year's Dash this year, Jeremy. They were busy out there, and we're going to get to those.
Every single thing mattered.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. We're going to get to all that. But first I want to make a couple of shout outs here, which we haven't done before. But over the last few weeks, and we're 20 some episodes in, which seems amazing. It feels like we just started. But there are a few people who have made comments on the YouTube page there for us. And just wanted to thank them. First of all, thank everybody that's watching. It really is
thank you so
something that really means a lot to us. But there are a few, and particularly there's Colin Matthew. He always has great questions, terrific comments. I believe he's from the UK. I think he had the phrase "here in the UK" in one of them. So, Colin, much obliged, man. We really enjoy hearing from you, and always enjoy what you have to say about wrestling in general and the show. So, thank you so much for watching us week after week. Terry Weekly. Simeon Windeth, and if I mispronounce any of these, I apologize. I don't have a way of hearing them pronounced, but I'm going to do my best. Dunstan Williams, a username Mike Lynn 8, what I believe is Cyan Rouge, Peter Davis, Poet Tate, all of you, thank you so much for your comments and questions, and we just really enjoy doing this show, and the feedback makes it even better for us. So before I moved on to New Year's Dash, and as we begin this 2023 of Speaking of Strong Style, I definitely wanted to give a shout out to all of those who have supported us. So thanks.
I just want to follow up. I am blown away by the legitimately honest and kind feedback. It is so easy to be mean and critical in a way that is unhelpful. And if there has been feedback that we need to learn from, you've been nothing but supportive and helpful, and I cannot express to you my thanks enough, as we have gotten this show under our belts and get a little bit more experience to get better at this, that we deliver a show that you have enjoyed and you continue to come back to. So thank you. You are our motivation to keep going, and so we shall.
Absolutely. So let's get to this New Year's Dash show. So it was at the Oda Ward Gymnasium. 2,713 people showed up to see it, and it was an eventful dash. You know, some of these pandemic dashes have been a little more pedestrian. This one was not. They were ready for this one. They had some interesting stuff for us, and we're just going to run it down. Can't spend a whole lot of time on all the matches, but we definitely want to get to the highlights. First one was Evil, Yujiro Takahashi, and Dick Togo, of course, the never openweight champions. They defeated Tomoaki Honma, Ren Narita, and Tiger Mask in the first match. Now, that wasn't the story here. It was pretty much standard match, which was fine. But they attacked Ren Narita afterwards, and our first surprise of the night happened in the very first match. Who, of all people, came out to help Ren Narita as he was being attacked by House of Torture?
A knight in shining armor.
Minoru Suzuki. And then, of course, as they still had the numbers advantage, so they were working over Suzuki. El Desperado came out, so he is maintaining his loyalty with his former Suzuki Goon mentor right there. This is not so far, not Narita joining a faction, but there it is, Jeremy. That's a team that is going to challenge Evil, Yujiro, and Dick Togo for the Never Openweight 6-man tag team titles. We're going to be seeing that match coming up, and well, I mean, it's there's a lot of that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Ren Narita and Suzuki might have some similar philosophies on things as far as their characters in terms of wrestling and just the torturing your opponents for one thing, the holds, the blows. Makes a lot of sense, and it's certainly an intriguing trio there, don't you think?
Ren Narita getting the rub from Merch Mover Despy and Minoru Suzuki. He's definitely, we are firmly in the Young Lions 2.0. Let's get these guys up in a place of prominence. Everybody has a different pathway of moving up the card. We had Samsa on a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that there was maybe, someone from an outside organization challenging for the Never 6-man titles. But this seems like a really interesting way to go forward and move those titles into a direction that's been kind of stagnating in a while. And I will tell you, we watched this New Year's Dash, and we had the Mystery Vortex show. Can I tell you how much I was just like my heart sank about this show when the first match was House of Torture? I was like, oh no. Oh, is this going to be just okay? And then you watch it, and House of Torture wins. And then the show's just going off the rails in a completely fun way because Hanma and Tiger Mask are both out of the ring, and Narita's getting beaten up. And then all of a sudden, face Minoru Suzuki coming out to clean house, and you're like, okay, you want to get behind Minoru Suzuki and do that. This is one way to do it. And Desperado, and then you're just looking around and like, these three amigos, they're not just 4 guys, but they'll do to me.
That's just 4 guys. I tell you what, nobody does a transition like Jeremy Finestone, folks. We're going to go into the next match, which involves that very thing. So we had Taichi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Doki. Now, they defeated the United Empire, Will Ospreay, TJP, and Francesco Akira. So this is not a surprise in that the junior heavyweight tag team champions, TJP and Akira, are going to be facing Kanemaru and Doki. Kanemaru and Doki got the win over them during the Junior Tag League. They've actually snuck in a couple of preview tag wins over the champions. So getting the win here with Doki pinning Akira just goes to build that tag team title match that I still think United Empire is going to win. I don't see Doki and Kanemaru getting, but Doki and Kanemaru are getting a little bit of a push here as their title match comes up. We also saw Will Ospreay and Taichi brawl after this one, and that's going to lead to a grudge match between the two. So, again, setting up things for the future. We already know that Kanemaru and Doki are challengers to the junior tag team titles, and then we have Taichi and Will giving Will something to do as he recovers from his devastating loss to Omega. What did you think of this?
I was pretty shocked when it was United Empire coming out, and not only was it United Empire, it was Will coming out
right
with the two, and it all served a storyline purpose. Will came out looking completely beat to shit from the night before, still wearing the jacket of the one-winged angel, just still like he's hanging on to everything. He won't let it go. He's coming out there. He's despondent. He's just like, I'm contractually obligated to do this, so let's go do this. All right, fine. And he comes out there, and Taichi just kind of gets his goat a little bit and just kind of remotivates him. And all of a sudden, it's like you see a little glimmer of an undepressed Will, and he just wants to beat this guy's ass. And you know what? I'm here for it. Taichi has been a low-key solid performer for years. This is a great feud for Will Ospreay to reheat. I have been on record saying that Will Ospreay is going to have the kind of year that's going to be banner, and my bet is that he'll be main eventing Wrestle Kingdom 18, challenging for the title in some way, shape, or form. And so, you're going to be putting him with prominent guys all year round, winning or losing matches here or there, but ultimately winning feuds and getting close until he finally gets to be where it's at. And this is day one. So, like, a broken Will Ospreay this is a great start to a year-long story. Taichi, I'm very curious to see if just 4 guys is where he ultimately ends up with his stable stuff. As for the junior heavyweight tag, I am really leaning towards a retention by Catch 2-2 as well, even though I think Kanemaru and Doki have just been low-key doing great work for about 4 or 5 months right now.
And we mentioned the just 4 guys thing. Taka Michinoku, very nattily dressed, got on the microphone there and came out with Taichi, Kanemaru, and Doki, and these are 4 members of the former Suzuki-gun, and said that they have a group together themselves, and they're called Just for Guys. Just now, is that just 4 guys or just for guys? And so we didn't see any Miho Abe out there with them, so maybe it is just the guy. I don't know. Maybe they're making some kind of little clever wordplay there, but it's an interesting name for the group. We'll see how that turns out, but it does seem like Taka Michinoku moving into a bit of a manager's role.
It's a little too casual and temporary for me to take it seriously.
Yeah, and he used to be the manager, and a good one, for Zack Sabre Jr. Remember, he used to do the pre-match promo for Zack. Zack doesn't need that anymore, but maybe this one will turn out. We'll be watching that as it goes on.
Maybe what they do is that they just have a really awful streak of like a couple months, and then they're just like, you know what, we're breaking up, and then they all just kind of divide. But they needed this to kind of delay everybody going immediately into whatever stable or faction that they have. Just kind of a temporary placeholder until they figure it all out.
Early days.
Can't do it all at once,
You mentioned Young Lion 2.0. We got a taste of that in the next match. So we mentioned the match of Bolton Oleg in the Wrestle Kingdom came out he did not have a shaved head. He did not have black trunks, black boots. Did that exhibition with Ryohei Oiwa. And, it looked good. I mean, it certainly looked like a phenomenal athlete. And it's way too early to tell what kind of pro wrestler he's going to be. But it's clear that he's not going the same route as all the Young Lions in the past. And we've heard word that New Japan is not going to be doing the old Young Lion program for everyone the exact same way. Got to see some new things. Well, here's another one. So we had TMDK. So that was Zack Sabre Jr., Mike Nichols, Shane Haste coming off them bringing Zack into the fold at Wrestle Kingdom. And they defeated Chaos, which was Goto, Yoshihashi, and Tomohiro Ishii. And, of course, this was to set up a couple of things. So, 3 things, really. They got a lot done in this match, Jeremy. First of all, TMDK defeated Bishamon, who just won the tag team titles from FTR. So we have, right away, new number 1 contenders for the IWGP tag team titles. Tomohiro Ishii went right after Zack Sabre Jr. and his new TV title. Third, after the match, Zack Sabre Jr. brought in Kosei Fujita. Now, Fujita has helped Zack in storyline several times to trick House of Torture. He's come out dressed as Zack. He's done a few decoy moves.
Take a breath of water. I'll give you a context of some of the times.
But
he's done that.
Afterwards, there it is. Zack Sabre Jr. brings Kosei Fujita up, gives him a T-shirt, and says, "I've got my own young boy now." And he's a member of TMDK. I thought this made perfect storyline sense, and I thought it was really well done, and I'm interested to see where it goes. What did you think about it?
Take a breath of water, and I'm going to talk about my favorite Kosei Fujita moment, and that was at the New Japan Cup when Zack Sabre Jr. Was facing Evil, and they gave him the okie doke at the stage, and Kosei Fujita was one of the Young Lions that stood in for Zack Sabre Jr. until Zack Sabre Jr. was able to give him the 1-2, get the pin, and move on. And now he is a singles champion. Super big fan of the dynamic that they've had. They had a test run of this with Shooter Shota Umino and Moxley in a lot of ways. And so this is going to do a lot, I believe, to both harden Kosei Fujita and give him a bit more prominence. Maybe down the line, he might end up being someone who's a contender in the junior heavyweight division. He is a smaller wrestler. So there are things aligning here that give him an opportunity and a pathway for success within TMDK. And he may end up being their representative junior heavy single star for the foreseeable future. What say you?
I think it could. And it's one of those things where he can be a guy that can protect the heavyweights and take the falls and things like that. But it's a guy that's very talented. And I got a kick out of the fact that Oiwa was out there kind of holding his hands up. Like, what? I helped you too. And he did. But Fujita is a little more Zack Sabre Jr.-ish of the two of them, I think. So he's a better fit for TMDK. I'm curious to see where it goes. I always have a soft spot for the young lions just because I think they all work very, very hard. They really add things to the card as far as just that underdog. You're just praying for one day you live long enough to see one of them win a match. So I always have a soft spot for him. So when Fujita here joins TMDK, I'm sure I'm going to be on his side. But I think he's a talented guy. So I could see him making a splash in the junior heavyweight division. Probably not this year. I have a feeling he's probably going to be doing a lot of jobs still this year. But he's a good wrestler. I think we're going to be hearing from him.
He's definitely a guy that you want to take into consideration as a new entrant into the Best of the Super Juniors this year. Perhaps the TMDK representative as such. Something I would circle around the calendar and see how they feel about him come that time. Because even if he doesn't win a whole lot of matches, he definitely should be participatory in that tournament.
New Year's Dash was a rough day for champions, and that continued on in the next match, which was a 6-man tag. No, it wasn't. It was an 8-man tag, wasn't it? Pardon me. Togi Makabe, Shota Umino, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Yo defeated LIJ. That was Naito, Sanada, Hiromu Takahashi, and Bushi. And the finish came with Yo pinning Hiromu. So if you wondered who the next contender for the junior heavyweight title was, that question was answered. And of course, we saw another chapter in this Shota Umino Naito feud where these guys just seemed to get under each other's skin just enough to piss each other off. And we saw more of that. This was a really good match, actually. This was one of the better matches of the night. Under the radar there. I mean, there's a lot of good workers in it, but I think this match was terrific. So we're going to be seeing a special singles match, Shota and Naito, which should be fun. I am curious to see if this is going to be yet another loss to a top guy or if Shota's actually going to get a win over a top guy in this one. And then Yo, I don't see Yo beating Hiromu Takahashi by any sense of any stretch of imagination, but it'll be a good match. Yo, we've talked about it, might be a little charismatically challenged at times, and that's a fair criticism of him. I don't doubt his ability at all. And we saw when he made that run in the Best of the Super Juniors all the way to the finals that when he's in a big match, he can deliver a really good match. So I think Hiromu's going to keep his belt, but Hiromu versus Yo going forward will be fun to watch.
I am circling the anniversary show on March 5th or March 6th as the day to look at who's going to be the junior heavyweight champion and who's going to be the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And I do kind of see Hiromu and Okada as the most attractive marquee match that you could have.
Yes, absolutely.
At that time. So this is all kind of placeholder to me until then. If you wanted to do Yo and Okada, that would be curious. But I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to. I'm just being diplomatic here. I'm playing at both ends. I do think that the timing of this is very interesting because I'm going to beat this drum again. I think that there is a window here between Hiromu, Lio Rush, and Yo in which they'll all kind of be feuding around each other. And the fact that Yo is getting a title shot before Lio Rush. Yes, Lio Rush is injured, but this is all kind of, what do you got? What do you got?
He's killing me. I have a question for you it's an unanswerable question because they're not going to tell us. If Lio Rush doesn't get his head busted open at Wrestle Kingdom, is this his spot?
No. I think Yo would still win, and Lio would be like, bro, I wanted that, and it would be like a tension thing. And then it would just kind of build and simmer from there. You think Taguchi was in Lio Rush's spot where Taguchi slid into this match where Lio would have been?
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Okay. I think that is entirely a reasonable thing. Lio has been doing great. I think the ultimate goal is getting the junior heavyweight title onto Lio Rush in some way, shape, or form. And it's going to be a slow build thing that has started from October when he showed up at the Rumble at 44th, the Halloween, whatever night of those two that he showed up at and appeared to aid Yo going into the Super Junior Tag League with the hints of affiliation and friendliness with the United Empire. This right here going on with Yo getting a shot against Hiromu Takahashi for the title, Leo being interested. There's all something there. It may be a picture that I'm only seeing, but I'm very curious and I'm wondering if and when the trigger is pulled and how well it is executed. That's where I'm at.
All right. The next match involves the angle we talked about with Hikuleo and Jay White. So we pretty much recapped this earlier. It was Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tama Tonga, Hikuleo, and Master Wato. They defeated the Bullet Club, made up of Jay White, Kenta, Taiji Ishimori, and El Phantasmo by disqualification when Jay basically went nuts and laid out Hikuleo with a chair. Kenta went after Hiroshi Tanahashi, so he has designs on avenging that hardcore match from Wrestle Kingdom 16. And it was interesting to me. The only thing, we've already recapped a lot of this, but the other thing that was interesting to me about what planted the seed of doubt about Jay White being the one to lose this match with Hikuleo, and again, we don't know, and there's all kinds of layers as to how they might book that depending on who's going to be there, who's not. They were playing this to plant the seeds of doubt because Kenta and Phantasmo were exchanging worried looks after that challenge was laid down. Did you notice that? Which is a little bit of foreshadowing. It's like, is he okay? Are you sure you want to do that? Is that's the challenge you want to do? Yeah, you're like, huh. And it also could be like, one of these guys might have to lead the damn club if he loses. So anyway, that's one of the things about New Japan that I really love is the thought that goes into things like that of the other guys in the faction just going, is he losing it? Is he losing it? Is he losing it? That whole thing. So planting the seeds of doubt in there. But we'll see that match a little bit later on. 4-way match, and this is for the King of Pro Wrestling title. Again, the provisional title for 2023. Shingo Takagi ended up as the King of Pro Wrestling for 2022. And the final four from the Rambo at Wrestle Kingdom, Shingo, Great-O-Khan, Sho, and Toru Yano. And Shingo won a fairly fun match, quick-paced. There wasn't a whole lot of Yano or Yano, so Sho, O-Khan, and Shingo were all pretty good. And, Shingo's great, and O-Khan and Sho are pretty good. So with Yano not being too involved, ended up being a pretty good match. And Shingo Takagi, who at first said he wasn't even going to go to Wrestle Kingdom because he wasn't interested in this, ends up winning the thing and then challenging Okada, of course. So we'll have to see. Shingo, I think, has been an improvement with this championship as far as the stipulations go, coming up with creative ways to make these special matches, and certainly better than what we saw with the silliness with Yano and Chase Owens and all that stuff. So, I'm fine with him winning it again. I kind of thought Great-O-Khan was going to take it this year, but I guess he always could in the future. But for right now, it's Shingo again. Your thoughts?
Well, they have deliberately booked this match for the 22nd of January before they do any bigger match with Shingo, leaving it completely up in the air whether he would win or lose this match. I don't know what the stipulation is for their match on the 22nd yet. If it's not a pinfall match, if it's not a pinfall version of losing this match, I would lean towards Great-O-Khan winning it in a one-on-one bout. He's already the Rev Pro champion, so him holding a belt or holding two belts would be fine. Shingo, keep staying as the King of Pro Wrestling would be fine. I think it would probably be better for Shingo to be holding the King of Pro Wrestling belt to challenge Okada, but I don't know. I just don't know what the mindset is about what belt, who has what, where, why, when. I wasn't expecting Shingo to be winning the belt all over again after 2022, but sure, why not? Put a belt on Shingo, fine with me. I'm not going to be the guy that says don't belt Shingo.
If nothing else, it looks good on the poster when you got two guys holding up titles and things going at each other in the main event. That's always solid. So
into it.
After this match, Jeremy, hell froze over. So that's always nice when you're watching a show. Is you move on and hell freezes over right before your eyes. So we knew you're doing process of elimination, right? I'm marking people off. I'm just saying, no Okada yet. No Okada yet. And I feel like Okada is going to be on the show. Now, I also noticed that Jeff Cobb and Aaron Henare had not been on the show. And I just thought, well, maybe Jeff was heading back. I don't know. I don't know what Jeff's travel plans are. Maybe he had to be somewhere and things. I don't even know. And so I also noticed that Kenny Omega hadn't been out yet, but I didn't expect him to be. Quite frankly, I thought his eye might have been swollen shut after that. If Leo Rush couldn't be in this match, maybe Kenny couldn't. So I was very interested when Cobb and Henare came down. I said, okay, I know who two guys are that aren't on this show, but that's not. And then Kenny came out. As soon as Kenny came out, I knew what was going to happen.
Right.
But I still needed to wait to hear that sound of that coin drop before I could really process it and believe it. But I just thought, oh God, they're really going to do this, aren't they? And when Kenny came out and played it like he didn't know who his partner was, which I enjoyed a little bit. We got Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada as a tag team, Jeremy, and that was something that was very special here. And these two won the two biggest matches of the night. They captured titles that they had been chasing. There was almost this sense of, hey, you again, but we did it. And they were actually quite friendly with each other. They even clicked belts afterwards. There was a bit of a wry smile on their faces, like, can you believe we're really doing this? All in character. And they defeated the United Empire, Cobb and Henare. And this was a special moment. I mean, does it mean anything huge storyline? Maybe, maybe not. Even if it doesn't, just the crowd, the gasp that was in that building when Omega comes out and then you hear Okada's music. You don't get that kind of reaction very often. And you don't get a chance to do something like that in a situation that makes sense very often. And we got it here. And what a terrific main event. The match was good, of course. And it was really fun seeing these guys work together.
So what was your reaction? How did you translate Kenny's reaction when he heard the coins drop?
I thought
what did you think he was thinking at that moment?
Well, I mean, in character, of course. I mean, everybody knew what was going to happen before, but Kenny played it like, I'll be damned. They did it to me. Like, oh, New Japan, you little snakes. You're going to make me team with this guy. And then, but there was absolutely no, I hate you, Okada. There was no in character stopping or anything like that. It was just this kind of amused, like, that's what you're going to do to me. Okay. All right, fine. You clever little bastards. You clever little bastards. You got me.
I thought he heard the coin drop and he stiffened. Like he's just like, oh, fuck. And then he realized, wait, he's not my opponent. Like he's just like, oh shit. Like he just had that like muscle memory of every time he's been in the ring and like that those coins drop, he's in for the fight of his life. And so like he just had this like moment of just PTSD stiffened. And then he realized like, oh, wait, no, like this is my partner. Okay.
Yeah. There were a couple of moments where there were a couple of moments they looked at each other and it's like, whew, man, I'm glad you're on my side and not against me this time. at least this once. Just this once maybe, but it'll be nice.
I don't know if this is going to be deliberate, and this is something we may have to revisit at the post Wrestle Kingdom 18 review when we get there, and I believe we will get there at one point, is that Will Ospreay lost his match tonight, and Okada and Omega won theirs. And so there is journey and victory and winners and losers, and I do believe all of that is deliberate. I do believe Jay White losing his match is deliberate, all of that stuff. There are all stories to be told. Having Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada essentially as a 1A, 1B level of champion. Okada will never want the United States title. It is only the IWGP heavyweight title for him. But having both of those titles, the amount of work that they've done to rebuild the United States title for the level of like prominence from the point that Ospreay took it on and began having matches with Cassidy and Umino and Naito and what have you, all the way going to Omega. This is next level. Like, we talk a lot about the belt and the value of the belt. The United States title has never been more important than it has been right now. So the conversation then becomes, what do you do next? Who's the guy to take it off of Omega? Okada's not going to want to have anything to do with it. Is Okada going to go unchallenged the entire year and never lose his belt? Like, we are at the landscape of 2023, and these two guys are at the top of the promotion. One of them isn't even a full-time member of the promotion, and this is where we're at. So this was definitely an interesting main event. It signaled a new era of cooperation between New Japan and outside promotions that I really don't feel like we've had before. You know, Kenny Omega is an executive vice president of AEW Wrestling. He walked away from New Japan 4 years ago, and now he's at the main event again, and he is no longer persona non grata. So how much time and how much of Kenny Omega are we going to get in New Japan, which is, honestly, to me, a vastly different Kenny Omega than what we've been getting in AEW. So curious times, my friend, curious times.
And the Will Ospreay part of it is fascinating because remember in Wrestle Kingdom 16, he lost the title to Okada. So he's taken a couple of main event level losses at 2 consecutive Wrestle Kingdoms, which means the crowning triumph is next. That's the next chapter.
The redemption arc.
Yeah, so we might get another Omega match. We might get an Okada match, but I have a feeling that at WrestleMania 18, very early prediction here, but I think at Wrestle Kingdom 18, we're going to be seeing Will Ospreay close at least one night of Kingdom, whatever it may be. So now let's look at the landscape here. So what did that tell us? Oh, by the way, lost in all that was the fact that Jeff Cobb went after Kenny Omega and challenged him for the U.S. title. Jeff Cobb
We're back
versus Kenny Omega. That. Which sounds fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that match. So, and all that was totally buried under just the novelty of Omega and Okada teaming together. So where does that leave us with all the belts? Let's run this down. So IWGP World Heavyweight title. We know Shingo Takagi is going to challenge Kazuchika Okada for that. We'll get to the dates and there in just a minute. The U.S. title, which, as you mentioned, is in a place of prominence underneath the IWGP belt that we really haven't seen since the Intercontinental title. And when Shinsuke Nakamura brought the Intercontinental title up to that level that he did. And so that's going to be Kenny and Jeff Cobb. Junior heavyweight title, Hiromu Takahashi. He was pinned by Yo. Yo's the next top contender. There are a lot of people on the horizon for that, by the way. We still got to get to Kushida, let alone some of these other guys that are coming in. So it's going to be a good year for the junior belt, I think. Never open weight title. Tama Tonga and El Phantasmo has emerged as the next Bullet Club challenger. I have a feeling Tama Tonga is going to have to deal with Bullet Club a lot, as long as he's in New Japan this year anyway. For the heavyweight tag team titles, TMDK defeated Bishamon at New Year's Dash, so they're the top contenders there. The television title, they made it clear that Tomohiro Ishii is going to go after Sabre Jr. I'm on board for that one. Those two guys could wrestle every night of the week, and twice on Sunday I'd watch every match. Junior heavyweight tag, Kanemaru and Doki are the top contenders for Catch 2-2. It's TJP and Francesco Akira. And then some of the just basic special matches, grudge matches, however you want to put it. Jay White and Hikuleo we talked about. Will Ospreay and Taichi seem to have a little thing going right now, and Shota Umino and Tetsuya Naito. Some strong stuff there, Jeremy.
They have mapped out the entirety of February to give you your money's worth for your $10 when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling. You laid out the dates and times. There are they have carefully spread out a number of these matches. On the 4th, you got Ospreay and Taichi and Umino and Naito. On the 5th, you got Ishii and Sabre Jr. in a 15-minute sprint. You're going to have the 2 tag matches, the Bishamon and TMDK, which of all the title matches that we have coming up, I think TMDK is probably the biggest on favorite to win a title of any of the contenders of any of the matches. I think with the reestablishment of TMDK and Sabre Jr. being the face of that, I think that and can all hands on deck kind of let's put some emphasis behind the stable for now. And so I'm curious to see how TMDK does in that Bishamon match, especially since there won't be much of an emphasis on tag team wrestling for New Japan going into the month of March with the New Japan Cup and some other things going on. I do think that they would probably be a better face if they were to come stateside as an IWGP Tag Team Champion, TMDK, versus Yoshihashi and Goto. That's no slight to Yoshihashi and Goto. I'm a big fan of them, and I've been talking them up for a while. But if you were to bring Zack Sabre Jr. over and you have TMDK trios matches, something like that over in AEW or elsewhere, that is an attractive fit for wrestling and exposure for all of them. But that does leave a question for me. Where would you put Kenny Omega and Jeff Cobb? Because that has not been announced anywhere.
No, and there are a couple of contenders for this. There's San Jose, of course. That's the show we're going to see Kyrie and Mercedes Moné. That's a possibility for it. It'd be a good place to put it. That would be a nice double main right there. And I'm sure we'd see some other things too underneath that would be intriguing, but that would be a good spot for that match. The possibility that AEW and New Japan are going to work together to the point where a U.S. title match could happen on an AEW pay-per-view, I think is more realistic than it had been previously. So for me, I think it could either be I feel like it's going to be in the United States. I don't think it's going to be part of one of the Japanese tours. So that leaves me with either San Jose, which is 70-30 for me, 30% maybe on an AEW pay-per-view down the road, but they don't have a ton of those. And Kenny's involved in storylines in AEW that may or may not wrap up by then. So leaning San Jose, but I'm keeping my options open. How about that?
So San Jose makes a lot of sense because it's a $20 pay-per-view. And so you have to spend money per view to get this show. They have not. I thought Kenny might be spending a Saturday in Japan, the 11th or the 4th or whatever I previously said. Doesn't seem to be happening. So could it be the 18th of San Jose? Maybe. There is also Capital Collision, which is in April. Seems like a long time to go to book a Jeff Cobb versus Kenny Omega match. Yeah. I am not so sure that they are going to do this on Revolution because we are a day out from the trios finale best of 7 between Death Triangle and the Elite. But it does seem that the House of Black is knocking on the door of the next feud for the winner. However, Death Triangle and House of Black already had a very significant feud earlier on this year. So it would lead me to think that there would be a trios match between the Elite and House of Black that would probably culminate somewhere around Revolution, which is March 5th. Unfortunately, near the beginning of the New Japan Cup and the anniversary show, which would also be a nice spot for it to be, but it won't happen because of AEW is the priority for Kenny Omega's career. So with that said, if it's not San Jose, we may end up being in a scenario where it's just a regular Dynamite. And I'm not 100% into the idea of this match being on a Dynamite because I do not believe that the best interest of that title and Jeff Cobb's exposure and all the things really dictate that that's the best place for that match for me personally, but we are running out of places for this show, for this match to take place.
And you're right. I mean, you're right. It does have a little bit to do with the fact that you're less than a mile away from the building, which doesn't hurt, does it? But it's you get to see
it's already a stacked show. There's already
like
3 matches and it's like, what are you just trying to sell people that this is going to be a blowaway show and that every show that they're going to advertise coming forward, this like Capital Collision is like must get a ticket, like because this is what they offered you in San Jose and you didn't think it was going to be a blowaway card, and boy were you fooled. Like that's kind of where I'm right now, that they're just unloading the chamber with all these matches, and that's where we're at. I mean, $20 for Omega versus Cobb is like, you'd pay $20 for that, and you're going to get, if you get it, you're going to get that, Eddie Kingston versus Jay White, Kenta versus Fred Rosser, Kyrie versus Mercedes Moné, and those are just singles matches that are potentially on that card. Like, get out of here. Like, that is for $20 to watch that on TV, and however much money I spent to get a ticket in the door, like they have vastly undercharged for that card if that's the case.
Well, look at what they're trying to do, though. I feel like that could be exactly where they're going, because think of what they're doing for their run in North America. They have signed for a few appearances, not a ton, but Mercedes Moné, who is the #1 free agent really in North America. They have Kenny Omega as their U.S. champion, who's one of the top stars for one of the two major North American promotions. So, that's not fair. United States from North America would include Mexico, and CMLL is a major promotion as well. So just to clarify all that. So I understand that Mexico's in North America. Sorry. So American stuff.
Clarifying the nuance.
Yes. And I love Lucha Libre, but what I'm saying is they seem to be making a very serious run at getting a foothold in North America. And by bringing in Monet, by working with AEW to have Omega, it makes sense that these United States-based pay-per-views might be leveling up from what we saw, say, on Rumble on 44th Street, or some of the stuff we saw in the past. These shows might be at a higher caliber because coming out of the pandemic, maybe New Japan just is starting to feel their oats a little bit and just think we have an opportunity here. And I think you're right. I think San Jose could be the beginning of signaling to people that these are not going to be glorified Strong tapings. Nothing wrong with the Strong roster, but that these shows are going to be a step ahead of that. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do with that. And I hope that they do stack that card in San Jose and show everybody that these programs over here in the United States, you're going to be seeing big stars and very big matches. And they're not going to be content to just say, here's a couple of the New Japan guys you like and some of the Strong guys that are, they're American. We have Americans, understand that we want that New Japan experience. We want some of that and the storylines that carry over. So I think they're on the right track if that's what they're doing. I hope it is.
Yeah. And we got to touch on this real quick. We got news this week as well that Strong, as we know it, is coming to an end. It's reported by Hiroshi Tanahashi, and it kind of goes into the same kind of avenue that Strong was designed to operate as a vehicle for wrestlers to get work and such during the pandemic. And we've covered Strong before, but it's never been 100% a priority because of the way that it's positioned within the rest of the New Japan World properties. It is adjacent, but it is never quite at the level of a regular New Japan show. So when we have to run down what is important for that week, sometimes New Japan Strong doesn't make the cut. But now we have Obari letting us know, like, hey, this version of New Japan Strong is no longer is untenable. This was a pandemic model, and we were filming 4 hours of shows for 3 episodes worth of content week by week by week. And, we can do better production values. We can do a better model. We can coordinate better. And that gives me a lot of hope with Ghetto and other people booking where, we saw a little bit of it with Hikuleo and Alan Angels versus Jay White and ELP on Strong this week, building up into the Loser Leaves Japan match. This is all playing a factor into it. They can do better than what they're doing now. New Japan Strong was among my favorite hours of wrestling to watch, but it was not because of the production value, and it was not because of the way it looked or the way it sounded in some ways. I love Ian Riccaboni. Sometimes Alex Kozlov wasn't exactly my favorite, but this brand of taping has Kevin Kelly. They even just kind of phased away from Ian Riccaboni already. They have a different vision in mind. I do think New Japan Strong is coming back in some way, shape, or form. I think it's a little curious that Kenta is getting a title shot around the same time that New Japan Strong is ending, and that's not to say that Fred Rosser hasn't done a fantastic job in his run. He just did not seem to get the caliber of opponents to raise his stock the way that I thought it needed to. We shall see what happens with Kenta, but New Japan Strong is going away. From my understanding, it'll probably be coming back, and I think that is a good thing.
And we're going to take a look at these things coming up, and we'll be covering that, of course, on this show. We also want to mention some of these matches here. Shingo Takagi and the Great Okan on January 22nd. That's New Beginning in Nagoya. Of course, there are several New Beginning shows. There are a few of Road to New Beginning shows, and that leads up to Sapporo on the 4th and 5th. So New Beginning in Sapporo, 2 nights in Sapporo. Ospreay Taichi, Shota Umino Naito, Ishii and Zack Sabre Jr., Yo and Hiromu Takahashi. There'll be more road shows in Tochigi and Nagano, Stephen. Then New Beginning in Osaka. Now, New Beginning in Osaka on the 11th is a biggie. That's has Okada against Takagi. It has Tama Tonga and Phantasmo. Jay White Hikuleo, loser leaves Japan. The never openweight 6-man. That's basically a super card. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kenta, which will have its own subtext coming off of Kenta being badly injured in that Wrestle Kingdom match they had over a year ago. Master Wato and Taiji Ishimori on that one. So there's a lot there. And then, of course, Battle in the Valley on the 18th we were just talking about. And from there, it goes into Fantastica Mania when the CMLL stars come over. That's always a fun tour. So there's another show that, of course, we're going to talk about, and that is Wrestle Kingdom 17 Part 2. Now, they're doing something very similar to what they did last year, where it is a New Japan versus Noah card. And that's going to be taking place in the same building they had, the Yokohama Arena, where they had it last year. And once again, we saw the angle at Wrestle Kingdom where the Congo faction, led by Keno, and his group confronted Los Ingobernables de Japón in the interview area. They will be in a succession of singles matches. There'll be some interesting stuff on here. One thing that I was intrigued by was Kojima, Yano, Tanahashi teaming with Segura from Noah against Naomi Marufuchi, Kenta, Phantasmo, and Geto. So that's even a mixed. The teams are mixed.
I like when they do that.
Yeah, me too. And now we're not going to get to that here today because we have a Japan history expert, a Noah expert, and somebody who's going to guide us through some of these unfamiliar names if you're only watching New Japan. And next week, Justin Nipper will be in my seat. And if you know the Fight Game Media Network, I hope you do.
Will he literally be at your house in that chair?
Yeah. Yes, he will.
Okay.
No, he's not going to be. He's not going to be in my chair. Yes, I'm going to let him in. I'm going to give him the key code. Now, Justin hosts Write This Down with Fumi Saito, which is one of the best wrestling history podcasts on covering anything, and let alone just Japanese wrestling. I listen to it. I seriously listen to it every single time it comes out. And he knows all about Noah. He knows all about Japanese wrestling history. He's going to put a lot of things into context. I am going to be on vacation again. I just got back from, I was donating my time and money to needy casinos in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. But this time I'm going to be on a little bit of a cruise. So I will be out of pocket. And then Justin is going to sit in. He's perfect timing for that because he's going to tell us all about Wrestle Kingdom 17.
I was super excited that he said yes because not only is he an expert, I do believe that he is employed by Pro Wrestling Noah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, no, he does a lot of their translation. I know that. And he does some other things for him. So
he is absolutely the guy for us to have on this show for a week to talk about Noah and to let us all understand the nuances and where the Noah angles are coming from going into this match, because we're all versed on the New Japan stuff, but I don't know anything about Noah. I'll be honest with you. He's going to help us along and contextualize what this feud means and why it's important for the main eventers to win their matches and where they have been coming from their most recent feuds. All the things that make you feel like you can come into this show and understand why it's important that these matches are taking place. That's our goal for next week.
There is a lot of talent in Noah. It's a really excellent promotion. Just before the pandemic, I was lucky enough to take a trip to Japan. I watched a night of their N1 tournament, which is their version of the G1. And so I was very proud that year I saw the G1 in Dallas and then got to see a night of the N1 at Korakuen Hall that same year. And I was really impressed with the show. It didn't surprise me that it was good. I know, Marufuchi's fantastic. Segura's, there's legends. Keno is wonderful. There are a lot of really good wrestlers in Noah right there. So, and this match, which is basically a rematch of an 8-man tag from last year's Wrestle Kingdom between the Congo faction and LIJ, to me, that was my favorite match on that show. I thought everybody was just having a blast. So they're going to break that one down into singles, and we should get a lot of good stuff out of that. So that is what's coming up there. Now, we mentioned earlier that New Japan Strong is coming to a close. We're still keeping track of the show, though. And Jeremy, you said that you watched it, and you have a little report for us on what's been on the program recently.
Yeah, so we have a big match coming next week, which is the one that I'm going to circle, and say you need to not miss this one, which is Jeff Cobb versus Bad Dude Tito. And given the products of United Empire and TMDK lately, I think that one is probably a can't miss on this last episode. Jeff Cobb even cut a promo. You don't see Jeff Cobb cutting promos all too often, but he did, in fact, cut a promo on Bad Dude Tito, reminding him that Jeff Cobb was the first bad dude around. So looking forward to that one. We also had two matches. There were just two matches on this whole thing. We had the tag match with Hikuleo and Alan Angels that I previously mentioned versus ELP and Jay White. The Bullet Club won that match. The win off of Alan Angels, as you'd be surprised. When I was watching this match, I kind of thought Alan Angels might be a really good member of the Bullet Club, and I don't know if that is something that they could do down the line, but there's not a whole lot going on with Alan Angels, but I definitely got this kind of cocky vibe that if they're looking for new members down the line, that's somebody that maybe they want to keep in mind if at all. And then we had how do we call this? A number one contender for the Strong Openweight Championship, also known as the Strong Survivor match. There were a number of people in this match: Jacob Austin Young, Che Cabrera, Kita, Guillermo Rosas, Adrian Quest, Cody Chun, Blake Christian, Mysterioso, the DKC, Bateman, Wheeler Yuta, Christopher Daniels, Mascara Dorada, JR Kratos, Rocky Romero, and Kenta. So the way that it worked was over the top rope until the final four, much like a Rambo. But the Rambo, it didn't end. This one was Commissioner falls to a finish. The final four were Blake Christian, Wheeler Yuta, Christopher Daniels, and Kenta, in which Kenta took the win after eliminating the other three were eliminated, and now he is the number one contender to Fred Rosser at the Battle of the Valley in San Jose. Now that it has aired, I consider this to be an official match made, even if it's not officially listed on the New Japan page.
Well, there you have it. So that's New Japan Strong leading to the big battle in the Valley. So Kenta and Fred Rosser should be a pretty good match overall. So
I'm going to be really excited for that. I think it's interesting that we have a Hiroshi Tanahashi Kenta match about a week before. So I kind of expect Kenta to be coming out of that one looking strong in some way, shape, or form. Spoiler alert, not spoiler alert.
Keep an eye on that as New Japan Strong, as we know it, winds down. So now, wanted to go into a little bit of history here. We have time this week. We mentioned before that Tatsumi Fujinami, his 50th anniversary in pro wrestling, that was what he was celebrating all year. And he made a couple of New Japan appearances there, including a match against Hiroshi Tanahashi. He was at the Antonio Inoki Memorial 6-man match at Wrestle Kingdom. And I wanted to get into his history a little bit because, sadly, his 50th anniversary was overshadowed completely. First of all, he had the New Japan overall 50th anniversary, which Fujinami kind of tied his career to, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then Antonio Inoki passed away. And then he really got overshadowed because all the attention obviously was on Inoki, who is on Mount Rushmore in Japanese wrestling, maybe even pro wrestling altogether. So with that, Fujinami has had an amazing career, and he's been going through this whole year. He's not retiring. He's 69 years old, but he was a part of the Inoki Memorial match, and he's had these big events, and he shows up in New Japan. He's an absolute New Japan legend. And some of the newer folks involved with New Japan that have picked it up, maybe since New Japan World came about and things, might not know exactly what Tatsumi Fujinami means. So I wanted to go over some of his history here. And again, our guest next week, Justin Nipper, he and Fumi Saito did a deeper dive on this. You can listen to an entire episode about that and write this down. But we're going to go over a little bit about Fujinami. And we're going to start with something very pro wrestling-ish, which is it was his 50th anniversary in 2022, except it wasn't. He actually started in 1971. He actually started in 1971. So it was his 51st year in wrestling. He began in the JWA, and that was the company, of course, that preceded both All Japan and New Japan, the company that Inoki and Shohei Baba were the top stars for in the JWA. And he started there in 1971. This was when Inoki and Baba were both starting to think about leaving. There were some issues with management of JWA there. Of course, Inoki was fired at the tail end of 1971 because management got wind that he was going to do exactly what he ended up doing, which is forming his own promotion. And Baba stayed a little while longer, but also recognized the writing on the wall and left to form All Japan. Fujinami was one of Inoki's guys early. So when he was in JWA in 1971, though, his career was similar to that of a young lion. He was mostly on early in the card and doing jobs. For instance, he went 0-17 in 1971 for the JWA. He was cutting his teeth, learning the ropes, so to speak. He followed Inoki to New Japan. Bit of a trivia note here, Jeremy. This is why he kind of ties his career so much to New Japan to the point that he kind of fudged his 50th anniversary a little bit. He was in the first New Japan Pro Wrestling match ever. The very first opening match of the very first card was at the Oda Ward Gym, which is why the anniversary show is often there. About 5,000 people attended in 1972. And El Furioso defeated Tatsumi Fujinami in 4 minutes and 20 seconds in the opener, and New Japan Wrestling was off and running. Just as a little side note to that, Antonio Inoki actually did the job in the main event, lost to Karl Gotch. So Karl Gotch got the win in the very first main event. But in 1972, he's there with New Japan, and he began moving up in the world. Of course, very early in his run, he lost a few matches. But in fact, he ended up going 64, 36, and 5. So you see, as the year went along, New Japan started to bring him up the cards a little bit. They weren't treating him like a young lion there. He lost his first 3, but then he got his first career win March 16th, 1972 against Hiroaki Hamada, who ended up being Gran Hamada, who's a junior heavyweight legend of his own in New Japan. He was a junior heavyweight through most of his career. He had a little bit of an excursion himself. In 1975, he went to Germany. He also did some work for UWA in Mexico, which was a company that no longer exists, but was a major lucha libre promotion then. He spent 1976 and 1977 in mostly Florida and for Jim Crockett Promotions in the Carolinas and Virginia. So at this point, he's getting his excursion. He's going back and forth. Now he went back to Japan, but he ended up working for the McMahons. And here's how this happened here. On January 23rd, 1978, he's working for the WWF. So obviously we're talking Florida, Mid-Atlantic, and WWF. These are 3 of the very biggest, and at this time, especially in the 70s, best, most lucrative territories in the whole country. And so he was making his mark. Like, if he had gone to Florida or Crockett and stunk it up, word would have gotten around real fast. Instead, he was employed by all 3 of these very major wrestling companies. So he was showing a lot of promise pretty early. WWF had a junior heavyweight title back in the 60s, and they left it alone. They didn't touch it. It was collecting dust. They resurrected it and put it on Jose Estrada, who was a pretty good wrestler. He was mostly a mid-carder in there, mostly putting over guys, except other low on the card guys. But Jose Estrada was a very capable wrestler, but they brought him into Madison Square Garden, and they had Tatsumi Fujinami win this WWF junior heavyweight title. If this sounds familiar, it's because it is, because Ricky Dozan, of course, won a title from Lou Thez in the United States, brought it back to Japan. Antonio Inoki got the NWF title. Johnny Powers brought it to Japan. It's this long pattern of this person kind of went overseas and conquered a foreign champion, and now he's coming home as the top guy. It's a story that they told a lot in Japanese wrestling, so that put their guy over as someone who went overseas and captured a title, and now he's bringing it home. And so he went back to Japan with it, and he was the main guy for the WWF Junior Heavyweight title for the late 70s until he went heavyweight in 1981. He went heavyweight in 1981 and vacated the title, and they brought it back with Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid and that feud. So that's how they transitioned it over there. So the title that Tiger Mask won, beating Dynamite Kid to capture the vacated title, it was because they were ready to move to Tiger Mask in that spot and bring Tatsumi Fujinami up to heavyweight. It's something that has happened with several junior heavyweight stars over the years, of course. And so That was an early iteration of that. So he was the number one junior heavyweight for a long time. Then came Tiger Mask. Everyone realized what they had with Tiger Mask. It's time for Fujinami to become a heavyweight draw. Let's see. Yeah, he went to a bunch of places also in 1978, by the way, like NWA Hollywood. So he was wrestling at the Olympic Auditorium, which was a good territory at the time with Chavo Guerrero and Roddy Piper in a big feud. He wrestled in Calgary for Stu Hart, Stampede Wrestling as well. And so that was his time to come up as a heavyweight. When he came up as a heavyweight, he was very quickly in the top mix. Now, Inoki was always the biggest star, but Tatsumi Fujinami and Kengo Kimura were other top Japanese baby faces, the guys that would clash with all these foreign heels that would come into New Japan. And so those three guys were always part of the top mix, with Inoki being first among equals. Like Inoki was always the top guy. But Fujinami and Kengo Kimura were all major draws. And especially in the early 80s, Inoki slowed his schedule down. I mean, the guy was running the entire company. He was also getting a little bit older, and he wasn't making every single town. So guys like Kimura and Fujinami had to be the workhorses. They were the guys that were in even the small towns and the house shows, and they were the guys that were there 6 nights a week, whereas Inoki maybe worked the big ones, Osaka, Tokyo, and maybe Sapporo. So at this point, he was becoming really part of the fabric of New Japan. And in the mid-'80s, he was really getting a lot of respect here. For instance, Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards. He was the best technical wrestler in 1985, 1986, and 1988. He was listed as the most outstanding wrestler in 1988. So throughout that time, he always finished high in the MSG League tournament or the IWGP tournament, which were the predecessors to the G1 back then. He and Kengo Kimura especially, or he and Antonio Inoki, would team up and do very well in the tag team tournament. So this was a guy that was always considered one of the top stars in the company and drew a lot of money. 1988 was a huge year for him. So there were no real singles titles in the early days of New Japan. Of course, Inoki held that World Martial Arts title that he would defend against various people. The NWF title was kind of around, then it wasn't really. They kind of retired that. Inoki became the first IWGP champion, having won the IWGP tournament and then made it a regular title in 1987. But he injured his foot in the May of 1988, and then Fujinami ended up beating Big Van Vader to win the vacant title. So now Fujinami was the IWGP heavyweight champion. He actually vacated the belt only 19 days later after having a no contest with Riki Choshu. So Riki Choshu, always the rebel, he was kind of the first cool heel in Japanese wrestling a little bit.
Okay.
He didn't really cheat, but when everybody else...
He had the vibe.
Every other Japanese wrestler was very buttoned down and had the nice short haircut and things. Riki Choshu grew his hair long. He and his crew would not wear the track suits that all the guys, if you watch old matches from either All Japan or New Japan, the undercard wrestlers are always surrounding the ring wearing the company track suits. And like Choshu and his crew, they were portrayed as the rebels, where they refused to do that. They wore their own gear. They were a little looser with the rules, that type of thing. So he and Fujinami were the perfect foils for one another because, Choshu was this kind of, the kind of thumb his nose
a
at
rabble
authority.
rouser.
And Fujinami was the classic company representative, So, anyway, Fujinami ended up winning the IWGP title back on June 24th, 1988. And then it was vacated so they could put it up in a tournament at the Tokyo Dome, which Vader won. So that was something that happened a lot in Japan, where they would just vacate a title and put it up in a tournament, which seems unfair to the champion to me, but there you go. In fact, All Japan used to do that with their tag team title every single year. Like whoever was the tag team champions, they would just vacate the title, and then whoever won the tag team tournament would be the champions. So I guess it's a way to do it without doing any jobs, right? So always important back in those days. Interesting note for Fujinami, he was the first person, Jeremy, ever to hold the NWA World Heavyweight title and the IWGP Heavyweight title at the same time. So,
2 titles at the same time.
That's right. Tatsumi 2 belts. So on March 4th, 1991, he won the IWGP title back. March 21st, he defeated Ric Flair in Starrcade in Tokyo to win the NWA title. He held both. Now in the U.S., of course, we were moving into the WCW era, and WCW was moving away from the NWA. So stay with me on this. This gets weird.
This is the weird one, right?
Yeah, WCW said that Flair was the WCW champion. They left out the part that WCW and the NWA were now separate titles. So Flair had been the NWA world champion for a while. Well, then WCW just started calling him the WCW champion. They're actually 2 different belts. So they said that Flair had retained the WCW title because Fujinami threw him over the top rope. So now we've got it separated. So in Japan, Fujinami won the belt. There it is. He's the NWA world champion. In United States, they said, well, Flair's still the WCW champion because there was no title change because Fujinami threw him over the top rope. They met again at Super Brawl 1. So Tatsumi Fujinami headlined a American pay-per-view in 1991, just off of being Ric Flair's opponent, basically. So at Super Brawl 1, this was called a WCW title of defense, where Ric Flair was just going for revenge for Fujinami throwing him over the top rope, I guess. It wasn't really explained too much. But in Japan, it was a unification match that Flair won. So that's how they got the NWA title off of him there. But for a while, he had the honor of being the first guy to hold 2 belts at once. He ended up winning the IWGP title 2 more times, beating Shinya Hashimoto for it in 1994 before losing it back to Hashimoto in a quick 1-month switch. So, yeah, and then in 1998, he won it again, beating at the Inoki retirement show. They decided that the big happy ending for the Inoki retirement show was to put the belt on one of the people closest associated to him. So he defeated Kensuke Sasaki. He ended up losing that back to Masa Chono on August 8th of that year, 1998. So, staying busy, though, Fujinami, realizing that he was starting to age out of the main event role a little bit, became president of New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1999. He held that position until 2004, and then he ended up leaving the company entirely in 2006. So, from there, he formed a company that had a different name, but now is called Dradition. So he was the Dragon. That was his nickname, Tatsumi Fujinami, the Dragon, before Shingo Takagi was. So, and they call it Dradition. So you kind of morph the word dragon into tradition. And it still, to this day, runs occasional shows with mostly contracted talent from various companies that are being allowed to do guest shots because Fujinami has such respect from the major companies there. And they have some of their own people, too. And it's never been a full-time touring promotion, but they always do a few shows a year there for Dradition. So you might hear of a New Japan talent doing a Dradition show. If you're wondering what that is, that's Tatsumi Fujinami's company. So still wrestles in guest spots with various promotions. He has wrestled every single year except 2004 since 1991. 2004, he really focused on being the New Japan president, and he missed that whole year. John Cena just narrowly avoided that fate by doing that match on SmackDown not too long. But he's 69 years old. The man's still wrestling. So in 2022 alone, Jeremy, he worked for New Japan, All Japan, Tradition, of course, Dragon's Gate, Glate, a company called Heat Up, which I'm not even aware of, Kyushu Pro, and 01. So there you go.
How many Dragon Screw leg whips do you think he pulled off last year?
I mean, the over/under on that's got to be 20 or 30, 25.
I'll take if it's 30. I'll take the over.
The over.
He pulled off like 7 in 2023 already.
He has a limited moveset these days. Let's be honest. The man's 69 years old. So. But I wanted to bring that up because a lot of the moves with the word dragon in it are associated with him for good reason. He pioneered a lot of them. So the dragon suplex, which Kenny Omega has turned into a snapdragon that he does in very
such a beautiful move,
fast twitch, beautiful move. But the dragon suplex, that was his. The dragon screw, the leg whip, of course, which Kaiji Muto and Tanahashi and numerous others have used to such great effect. That was a Tatsumi Fujinami move. And Fumi Saito even said that he believes from his Lucha Libre days that he brought the tope to Japan, the dive through the ropes out of the ring to the opponent on the outside. So talk about someone who's had a lot of influence on pro wrestling in Japan. There you go. Also one of Bret Hart's biggest idols. Just a little trivia there. That Bret Hart always considered him one of his personal heroes. And of course, he worked for Stampede in the late 70s when Bret was very early in his career. So just a guy that was one of the junior heavyweight pioneers for the company, moved into the heavyweight division, and carried the company by way of being that main event guy when Inoki didn't always hit the small towns and things. Just the guy that was just there every single night. He got his biggest run in the mid to very late 80s when they really made him the focal point of the promotion. This was after Inoki had pretty much moved out of the spotlight altogether, and so had Kimura. Kengo Kimura had also kind of aged out of that spot, and Fujinami just kept trucking all the way into the early 90s, and he was sort of the bridge to that Three Musketeers era you see at the very end of his career. Him winning and losing the title with guys like Shinya Hashimoto, Masa Chono, and Kaiji Muto, and that brought them into that boom period into the 90s when they were doing quarterly sold-out shows at the Tokyo Dome. So all of that doesn't happen without Tatsumi Fujinami. So just wanted to give you a little primer right there. Is, who is this guy? We haven't had time to talk about him on the show. That's the guy that was in that Inoki retirement match, and barring any kind of health scare, which I hope does not happen, we'll probably see Tatsumi Fujinami Wrestle Kingdom 18 at 70.
So I got one last thing before we wrap this up for you this week.
What's that?
I got a question for you. I want to know one bold prediction by you about New Japan in any way, shape, or form for the next year. Do you have any bold predictions? Anything?
I still think, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll go back to one I mentioned earlier. I think Wrestle Kingdom 18 ends with Will Ospreay standing in the ring, triumphant after the biggest win of his career over either Okada or Kenny Omega. I really think that this year is going to be similar to what we saw when we had to watch Okada run around with balloons for a few months. Like they're tearing this guy down. He's going to be depressed. He's at his lowest point. I think this year is going to be about rebuilding Will Ospreay and taking that spot as the top foreign wrestler in the whole company. And especially if Jay White is leaving, that is going to be more important than ever. And I think that this is the year this storyline will continue all the way to 18, Will Ospreay's ascension. What about you?
I am 100% with you that Will Ospreay wins Wrestle Kingdom 18 main event, probably against Okada, which is going to be my bold prediction. I think New Japan Cup, Will Ospreay comes close, yet does not win the New Japan Cup and ends up winning the G1, although close yet so far is getting the thing. But conversely, I don't think Okada loses one title match this year, and he holds the IWGP heavyweight title all the way through Wrestle Kingdom 18.
Interesting. Okay.
I think we got two completely different stories. I think we got a guy coming close yet so far each time, and then you got a guy that can't be beat.
All right. Well, we're putting it on the internet. It's going to come up and bite us in the ass if we're wrong. So
put it on the board.
There it is. It's out there. It's out there, by Craig. All right. Anything else, Jeremy, you want to cover before we sign off for this week? And you can look forward to Justin Nipper in my spot next week.
I think just the socials. Jer Finestone on Twitter. Patreon, $5 a month. Fight Game Media, YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You don't even have to pay any money for that. Just click and subscribe, go on to Speaking of Strong Style, go down the line, like every video that we do. Really appreciate it. If you have time, go like all the other videos as well. I totally get it if you want to do that. A lot of great work on the channel. Gotta tell you. But if you go on and like all of our videos and subscribe to the whole channel as a whole, I will personally, if I ever meet you, say thank you. Conway, what do you got?
And of course, we're also going to be giving this a try as a podcast. So that's going to be something you can look for in the future is this show in your ears there as a podcast feed as well, wherever you find your podcast. That is coming up. So feel free to find it there. Give us a nice rating. Say nice things about us. We appreciate the nice things. So with that said, he's Jeremy Finestone. I am Stephen Conway. Thank you again for spending your time with us here at Speaking of Strong Style. We'll be back next week. Wrestle Kingdom 17 preview in Yokohama with Justin Nipper. Until then, Jeremy and Steven saying we'll see you very soon. Thanks again.
I'll be here next week. I don't know where you're going.